You know the story, right? A dark and stormy night, a brilliant, maybe a little crazy scientist, and a creature made from, well, spare parts, shockingly brought to life. It's classic horror. But what if that story wasn't just about a man playing God? What if it was actually a chilling metaphor for the birth of a global superpower? Okay, let's get into this.
So these are the words of Dr. Victor Frankenstein himself. And just listen to that language. A rational creature. He felt bound to it, responsible for its happiness and well-being. You can feel the ambition there, but there's also this sense of duty, almost like a parent. He really truly believed he was making a masterpiece. This was the dream, right before it all turned into a complete nightmare.
And here it is. This is the wild idea at the heart of our explainer today. And it comes from the work of historian Marcelo Duarte. He's asking us to completely reimagine this classic story, not as just Gothic horror, but as a geopolitical allegory for the relationship between a creator empire and its rebellious creation. Now, to really wrap our heads around this, we first have to get a feel for the world that created this story in the first place. I mean, Frankenstein didn't just appear out of thin air, it was absolutely a product of its time.
Mary Shelley was living in what you could only describe as the eye of a historical hurricane. The old world was being violently ripped apart, and this new, kind of scary, uncertain one was being built in its place. She was right there, watching these huge social and political forces completely reshape everything around her.
And yeah, this slide, it basically lists all the raw ingredients for her novel. You've got the fallout from these massive revolutions in America and France. You've got the birth of industrial capitalism, which was creating incredible wealth and just terrible misery at the same time. And you have these powerful new scientific ideas floating around, suggesting that humanity could bend the world to its will. It was a potent and pretty chaotic mix.
Okay, so with that scene set, let's meet the first character in our geopolitical drama, the creator. And this chart just lays out the parallel perfectly. On the left, you've got Dr. Frankenstein, driven by this intensely personal ambition to use science to conquer death. And on the right, you have Great Britain, driven by a national ambition to build a global empire using colonization and capitalism. See the connection? Both were totally obsessed with creation and control on a scale nobody had ever seen before.
So here's the key point from the source material. It positions England as not just a country, but as this massive creator force. It was the engine room of a brand new global system, a real-life Victor Frankenstein, building a new world in its own image, all to secure its own power and, of course, its own wealth.
Of course, every creator needs a creation. And just like Frankenstein's monster, this one was, well, stitched together from a bunch of different parts.
This slide right here is really the heart of the whole analogy. You see, Frankenstein's monster, built from old body parts, is a mirror for the American colonies, a new society built on land taken from indigenous peoples and populated by Europeans transplanted from the Old World. Both were designed to serve the ambitions of their creator, but both grew into something new, powerful, and, as it turns out, dangerously unpredictable.
So, just to be super clear about who our creature is in this story, it's this brand new American society, a geopolitical creation really, born from the ambitions of the British Empire and designed, at least at first, to be a loyal and very profitable piece of that empire.
But as anyone who's ever read the book or seen one of the million movies knows, the story doesn't end there. The relationship between the creator and the creature, well, that's pretty much destined to fall apart.
And what's wild is that the path to rebellion follows an almost identical pattern in both stories. First, there's neglect. The creator ignores the creature's needs. Think of England's policies that really ticked off the colonists. Then there's outside influence, and the source points out how the French influenced both the monster's education and the American Revolution. This leads to defiance, and then finally, boom, a violent, irreversible break.
And that violent break, it has a name we all know, the American Revolution. So, in this telling, 1776 isn't just the birth of a nation. It's the electrifying moment the creation violently rejects its creator, declares its independence, and starts to chart its own terrifying course.
Okay, and this is where the horror story truly becomes a geopolitical tragedy. Because in this version of events, the creature doesn't just get away. It grows. It gets stronger. It eventually becomes more powerful than the one who made it.
And you can see on this timeline, this power shift wasn't instant. It took centuries. After its birth in 1776, the creature, the United States, starts its slow, steady rise. By World War I, it's a huge economic player on the world stage.
And then, after World War II, the transition is complete. The creator, the British Empire, is in decline, and the creature has become the undisputed global superpower.
The whole power dynamic just completely flips on its head. The creature that England had assembled and brought to life was now bigger, stronger, and way more ambitious than its parent. The source argues England totally lost control and, in the end, actually came to fear its own creation.
And this chart really spells out the final act of this drama. Just look at the reversal. England's imperial power fades away. The USA becomes the new epicenter of global capitalism. The relationship is totally inverted, with the creation now dominating its own creator. It's a complete eclipse.
So, you might be wondering, why does this spooky analogy from a 200-year-old novel even matter now? What's the big takeaway from this story of a geopolitical monster?
Well, according to the source material, the legacy is huge. The United States, the creature, took over as the center of the capitalist world. But it's more than that. The analogy suggests that creations often carry the same flaws, the same DNA as their creators. The violence, the ambition, the narcissism that built the British Empire were mirrored and maybe even magnified in its American creation.
And Marcelo Duarte, the author, he puts it really bluntly here. He says the final outcome was the death of the creator, in this case, the end of Britain's global dominance, and the total victory of the creature, a complete and final transfer of power.
And so that leaves us with a pretty chilling final thought. If England created a geopolitical monster in the form of America, what are we creating today? What new systems, new technologies, or new ideologies are we stitching together right now, full of hope and ambition, completely unaware of what they might one day become? The story of Frankenstein has always been a warning. Sometimes the things we create take on a life of their own.